Good morning, students of class 10. In today's online class, we will switch over to your new topic, constructors. Today we will learn about introduction of constructor, characteristics of constructor, need of constructor, declaration of constructor, and difference between constructor and methods. Constructors are very important in programming language. Constructor is a special type of method that is used to initialize the object. Constructor is a block similar to method having same name as that of class name. Class is test, public void test, this and this. Constructor is a block similar to method and having a same name as the class name. Now the name of the class and the name of the constructor is same. Method is same. But can you consider this as a constructor? No. Let's consider the next point. It does not have any return type. Now if I'll remove void, then test will be considered as your constructor. If I'll write class test as the name of a class, then public test, this you can consider as your constructor. This is your constructor. This one you cannot consider as a constructor because here return type is mentioned, not even void. The only modifier applicable for constructor are public, protected, private and default. It executes automatically when we create an object. Class test, public test. Here I'll create a main method, PSVM, public static void main. I think all of you understood this. String arguments. Now here create an object, test T, new test. Right. Now when this object is created, it will automatically call your constructor. Understood? That's why it executes automatically when we create an object. So when we create this object, your constructor is automatically called. But in the case of method, if I'm not using constructor, in the case of method, what I have to write? I have to write here t dot test, then only method can be called. Now this line is not needed to be right because the moment when you create a object, automatically your constructor is called or your constructor is activate. Characteristics of constructor are: a constructor will have the same name as that of the class. The constructor does not have a return type, not even void. A constructor cannot be inherited. A constructor is called when an object of the class is created. Constructors are used to initialize the data members of the class. Now question is why we need constructor or what is the use of constructor? Constructor have one purpose in life, to create an instance of a class. This can also be called creating an object as in student S1 new student. The purpose of the method is much more general. A method's basic function is to execute codes. Class employee. String data type I'm using for name, int data type for employee ID, right? And let's call your here main method. I'm using PSVM. Please understand, PSVM means that public static void main. String arguments. Then if I create an object employee E1 new employee, in second object I'll create employee E2 new employee. Now see, for initializing an object we always use three methods, three type of techniques we use to initialize your object. One is a reference variable, one is a method, and one is a constructor. Now the one of the reference which I'm giving you here, these are your instance variable, correct? These are your instance variable. So when I try to call the objects with the help of reference variable, then string name is empty here. So when this program we will run, in that case E1 is your object, and in employee object when it will run, it will display the name and then employee ID. Now see here I'm using the data type for the name is a string, and for employee ID I'm using int, but I'm not initializing any variable here. So when you will execute this program, then default value will be considered. Name default value is null, and string default value is null, and employee ID, for this we had used your data type, that is int, so int default value is 0. When your second object will call, then again it will call your name and employee name. Condition is same, value we had not initialized, so output will again, it will be null, and employee, it will take your default values. Now there you will not get any error, but problem is that same output you are getting. As many times you are executing your object, that you are getting the same output. This type of programming we do not consider as a good programming. Use it with the help of your, or let's initialize a variable with the help of reference variable only, with the help of reference technique. Then string name, let's consider the name as a Rancy, and employee ID let's consider as a 101. Again, now if I'm initializing the values here, then the output will be, when the first object is execute, then the value of E1, name of the value which we had mentioned here, Rancy, and employee ID will be, again employee ID will be 101. But as we are using instance variable, so for E2 also again the output will be same, E1 Rancy only, E2 Rancy only, and employee ID it will be 101 only. Reason is because we are initializing a value as a string name as a Rancy and employee ID as a 101. As many objects we will use, every time you will get the same output. So we are almost getting the same type of output. Instead of using reference variable, if we will use methods, then now let's use the method criteria. Employee E1 and new employees are objects, so let's initialize the value. E1 name we will use Rancy, and E1 dot employee ID will be 101, right? Employee 2 new employee. Now employee 2 name is Ram and employee 2 employee ID is 102, right? This programming we can use and your program will also give you the correct output, but in that case we are using two additional lines for executing the program. Now the length of the program is increased, so this way we can run the program, but it's very lengthy process. Let's consider your constructor now. When you are using the record of 3 or 4 or limited number of employees record if you are using in your programming, but if you have thousands of employees, in that case every time your two lines are add up, your two additional lines you have to be write down with your object, so in that case your programming will be very lengthy. Now let's use your constructor. Now we will create constructor to remove the problem of methods. When we were using methods, we were adding two lines, two additional lines we are adding with your object. Now we will use constructor to resolve this problem. So now I'll create a constructor here with the name employee, because the name of the class and the name of the constructor supposed to be same. Here I'm using parameterized constructor. Now, constructors are categorized into two categories: default constructor and parameterized constructor. Here I'm using your parameterized constructor. String name int employee ID. Let's use it here. This is your keyword dot name, and let's consider it as a name, and this dot employee ID is your employee ID. Correct? Now let's create your object here. Employee 1 E1 equal to new employee. Now here I will initialize your values like Rancy 101. For creating your another object, employee E2 new employee Ram 102. In that case, when I'm creating your object, automatically your constructor is called and they are calling the name of the object and the name of the email ID, employee ID of the customer. Now see here. Now here if I'll create number of employees record, that will be easier. Comparatively your method technique, this was your method technique. In the method, if I'm using here, I'm adding two additional lines while creating your object, and here while creating your object, along with creating your object, I'm initializing your different values. Here I'm initializing Rancy 101, here I'm initializing Ram 102. This is the reason that constructors are very useful in your programming language. Thank you.